Returning to one of our top stories, and more than 100 prominent Australian business leaders have penned an open letter calling for a national inquiry into anti-Semitism following the Bondi terror attack. Well, joining us live is former Home Affairs Secretary Mike Pezzullo. Mike, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're seeing more and more people coming forward here, including yourself, and the Human Rights Commissioner today saying that that the Richardson Review would not address the deeper causes of violence. So, in your opinion, why are we seeing more people come forward?
Well, I think the reasons would be varied. There's certainly, it's clear that it's not divided on any kind of partisan lines. If you look at both the letter signed by the business leaders, you see the letter that both of which are open and ongoing. It seems more people are joining them. The letter written by the legal profession. There's people from all walks of life, and I don't think there'd be any motivation there around from a partisan point of view. I just think that it's such a shocking event. So many people, innocent people killed just going about a religious and cultural observance on Bondi Beach, one of the world's iconic beaches. I think it's just so dramatically traumatising that it's just creating this groundswell from outside of politics. Can I just? I know there's been a wave of criticism of the Prime Minister. Can I draw attention to a couple of points I think that should be made in favour of his arguments? I think there are concerns about scope, and I think there are concerns about urgency. My contention is that a Royal Commission, properly shaped, because that's within the gift of the government, the terms of reference are set by the government. I think you could deal with that in a mechanical sense through the letters patent that establish a Royal Commission. You could have an urgent phase. I think you could do Volume 1, which essentially would cover the Richardson scope, that is what agencies did or didn't do. I think you could actually do that more quickly. I think you could do that by, say, the end of March. I think there is a question about the deeper underlying causes that might go to extremism, anti-Semitism, this hotbed of hatred that has emerged since October 23. I think that probably would take a longer period of time, so maybe that could be Volume 2. But as former Chief Justice French said, there's no reason for that to inhibit or to impair or to stop any ongoing immediate work. The Parliament could be recalled. It could look at legislation in relation to some of the measures that the government's proposed. And I'll conclude on this point. I think the reason why I need a Royal Commission is to give people satisfaction that it truly has been looked at independently of government and at arm's length. I know Dennis is a friend of mine. I just want to disclose that for your viewers. Dennis will do a very fine job as an independent person. I've got no doubt about that. The problem is he's trapped within his scope, and what a Royal Commission could do is go beyond scope to some extent. So, for instance, ministers. Ministers are very powerful in the national security system. They undertake personal decisions. They have personal powers. The Richardson scope, as I read it, won't question that, can't look into that. Resourcing levels, they're set by the government. That's not a matter for ASIO or AFP. Who's going to look into that? If it's thought that the agencies were properly and fully resourced to deal with this problem, that would have to be done very much independently of government, including by having ministers called and documents reviewed to look at the contention as to whether resourcing was adequate for those agencies.
Yeah, you make some very good points indeed, and certainly the victims' families, many of them have come out asking for that Commonwealth Royal Commission. I just want to do a bit of a whip around looking, ahead in 2026 across the world, starting with Ukraine, Mike, and the prospects at all for peace. We've seen a lot of meetings with leaders over the last few days.
Indeed. I think if I was to preview the year very quickly, and then we'll come back to Ukraine, I'd be looking at Ukraine and prospects there. Then I'd go to the Middle East. I think there are some developments there that we need to keep a very close eye on, including the potential spin-off for terrorist attacks, and we'll come to that. China-US relations are going to be fascinating this year in the lead up to a number of high-level meetings, and then I'd probably round out with the US congressional midterms at the end of the year in November. But on Ukraine, look, we all would hope for and wish for some kind of peace settlement so that killing would stop. I just fear that Putin's not going to back off from his outrageous demands for territory, and Zelensky, or whoever indeed might replace Zelensky in the aftermath of an election, say, I think would by right dig in and say, hang on, you've completely breached the UN Charter that was established in 1945 to stop precisely this. You've taken a piece of land through force and now you're going to be rewarded for it. Imagine if an invader took Queensland and said, look, we can have peace as long as we get to keep Queensland. So, look, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think this is intractable. Unfortunately, I think both sides have mobilised their economies and mobilised their industrial base and their populations to keep fighting, and notwithstanding the best efforts to achieve peace, my call at the moment would be there's a less than 50% chance of getting some kind of sustainable or enduring peace.
And what about your thoughts on the Middle East, especially with Israel and Palestine?
Look, I've been concerned, and I think I've said it to some of your colleagues, dating back to the peace agreement or the peace proposal that President Trump put on the table, which saw the return of the hostages. I said on a number of occasions, I think come January, February, so around now, you'd want to see this Board of Peace in place. You'd want to see the International Stabilisation Force, principally led by Arab and Muslim nations, with perhaps some European nations in support on the ground, disarming Hamas and keeping the peace. We're not really seeing that. There might be things going on behind the scenes that we've not been privy to, but it does concern me that with every passing week and every passing month that we get away from that peace announcement, that those fundamental pillars of peace, or at least stability, have not been put in place. I think we're all watching Iran with very, very close interest. I watched with interest your previous interview with the previous guest. I absolutely agree. There's something going on in Iran, both in terms of the political dissent, the use of lethal force against protesters. There seems to be something emerging there. Equally, the Iranians seem to be reconstituting some of their capabilities after the dramatic strikes last year. So watch that space. And then finally, but spinning off from the Middle East, I'm really concerned about spin-off terrorist-inspired or terrorist-directed attacks. We haven't heard much until recently, of course, about the Islamic State. They were really smashed to smithereens in around 2018, 2019 on the ground in the Caliphate. They dispersed. A lot of them went into Africa and places like the Philippines. I think they've been biding their time. I think they've been trying to use outrage, as they would term it, over what's happening in Gaza as sort of a pretext to engender violence against Jewish people all around the world. Bondi, of course, potentially is in that category. We can't presume that because there's a criminal trial and we have to be respectful of the court process to see what comes out in terms of motivation. But I think follow-on terrorist attacks. So what's happening in the Middle East is of concern, but follow-on terrorist attacks all around the world, I'd be keeping an eye out on that too.
All right, Mike Pezzullo, yeah, very interesting points indeed. We've run out of time, but we'll see you soon with more, including the US midterms in November. Plenty to talk about. Thank you.
Indeed.